Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. I'm in the process of putting together a bunch of new videos, 3 of which will be full songs, and another 3 of which will be behind the scenes in various forms. I'm trying to maximize on the education that I can give through this channel. This first video is going to be a deep dive into my session and production for the song Unrequited Wave. I started working on this song in October based on an initial piano idea, and I finished it in January. I do have some formal music education in that I started playing piano at 9 years old. For a long time, I had abandoned the piano as something that was uncool, but I've come back to it full circle. I use Reaper as my DAW of choice. It is more economical than most mainstream DAWs, and that leaves me more money for other types of toys. I'm not familiar with Ableton, as I didn't start out in electronic music when I started my musical journey, but for most things, Reaper seems to be working well for me. Let's start with the piano track, as it's what the song originated from. As I do have some music training from my entire life, and I do advocate for learning real instruments to learn sensitivity and accenting and arrangement and all sorts of stuff associated with music. As often happens, this song started with the piano track, and it occurred to me in 2 dream-like states. I often come up with brand new musical ideas as I'm waking up in the morning or as I'm going to bed, and I notate them down before I forget about them. And there are 2 distinct musical sections to this song, and they happen to be in different time signatures. Let's listen to each section before looking at plugins or anything like that. This is the first section that occurred to me, and it's in 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The second section, this came to me on a different day. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And initially I was slightly worried about how I might fit these together, but it was no problem, and it actually provides a lot of intrigue in the transition between the 2 sections. This is a contact piano. 8DIO created this 1971 Estonia grand piano. You'll see it in the screenshot here. And I took some time to try to find different instruments for contact. This one seems to have worked out really well for me. I like the character of this piano. It's a grand piano. When using things like pianos or contact instruments, if they have a lot of sustain on them, they tend to use a lot of processing power and memory. So this piano was originally drawn as MIDI. I did not play it on a controller. I drew it, but as I'm a real piano player, I have a feel for accents and how to humanize it, how to make it feel more natural. So at this point in my journey, I'm able to draw in and arrange piano without actually having to play it in most cases. Let's see what the various plugins are doing on these tracks. I'm going to turn everything off. Watch the volume jump, it's going to get louder. Back on. So there are various things going on there. When the plugins were off, it was overloading my master bus a little bit, so that's where you're hearing extra distortion. But essentially we have some EQ, we have a couple of different forms of rhythmic motion. We have quarter note rhythmic motion going on here, which comes and goes throughout the entire track depending on whether there's percussion present at the same time, and the shape is individually drawn for this instrument. I usually find that I like to have any rhythmic volume automation on a per track basis. I don't really like to have one master bus where everything is ducking at one constant. It tends to feel a little less dimensional, And when I shape the envelope for each individual track, it tends to be more complementary to that particular instrument. So this is my quarter note pulsing that's happening. And I have this other much more random, but not random, but notice there's 5 beats. So it's not going to line up with both time signatures. And it's actually only occurring in the end section. I'll show you where the automation turns it on. It's right about here. So we're not using this at any point up and until the end section. So without this effect, we have something that sounds like this. And if I go to the section where it's on, you'll hear a lot of quick pulsing. So the volume is jumping, and that is providing a different level of interest in the end section to the same part of the arrangement. This track, this overall song, has 40 tracks to it, which I'm pretty proud of because I'd often exceeded 100 tracks in the past. And I think it's important to use different methods to create motion and intrigue in our tracks. I don't think we should always add more and more layers to create more and more motion and more interest. We should look within what we have and adjust as we need. Chapter 2, the drums. These drums are entirely done with Native Instruments machine and one sample. I initially started off with this one kick sample. It was recorded as part of a drum kit recording in my studio years ago by a good drummer friend of mine. And that's all that's playing right now. And it sort of gave a certain feel and roominess that I try to follow. I usually try to take one inspiration and move it across into whatever else I can get out of it. Now, as you may recall, this song has multiple time signatures. And as such, I have different drum parts. This one, of course, has 6 beats to the bar. And this other drum part has 5 beats to the bar. The drum part with 5 beats does not come in until the section where we are in 5. But these drum parts do cross over for various periods of time, and it adds intrigue. Let me first show you how, as the section in 5 is starting, the drum section from the period of time when we were in 6 is still continuing, but the emphasis in the bar is shifting because the beat itself is in 6 and the song has moved to 5. This very first bit has more gaps in it, so it's not even technically in 5. But now we are in 5. But the drum part is still in 6. So the snare keeps landing in weird spots. It's really interesting, actually, but you can't keep it up forever. Now, as we progress, all this automation down here is various drum parts coming up and down. I mean, there's other things that it could be automating, but they're all within the machine interface. So I may be automating some effects. But all the same, the 5 drum part is now coming up in volume and intensity. So now you get to feel like you're moving in 5 with the piano. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's sort of taking over. This drum part has a rim shot. And as it keeps going, it gets more and more intense. Let me show you some other really interesting details on the drum bus. I have various plugins working. I have a filter again, which I tend to have all the time on every track. The filter creates some sweet movement and frequency spaces. Here we have the drums pretty heavily filtered, but it works really well with the piano. Some other things to keep in mind on this drum track. I have a compressor here from Kush Audio. I love these guys, and I love their work. If I take this off, you will hear dramatically less punch in the track. Much flatter. Oh, hits you right in the gut. Next super important plugin I have here is this bit crusher. I love this bit crusher. I'm adding distortion and bit crushing with this plugin. And when I turn it off, you're going to hear a really dramatic change in the tone and punch of the drums. Whoa. Barely there. There it is. Final chapter for today is the bass. I'm still getting used to making these, so I thought I might have time to show you everything that's in this song in one video, but that seems fairly unrealistic at this point, so I'm just going to stick with one more element. The bass in this song is an ARP Odyssey Korg model. I picked this up used years ago. It's relatively inexpensive. I don't know if I would call it a duo synth. It can play 2 notes, but has 1 set of envelopes. And I love ARPs for their sciencey sort of quality, old school. A lot of times I like to do harmonized bass parts. That's when I have a low note, but I also have a secondary note that fits with the chord. In the first section, I broke it up into 2 individual parts. You can see that there is a harmony and a main part. The chords do not allow me to have 2 notes playing on the ARP that are locked together in a certain interval. The interval has to change for the different chords, so I had to split it up. However, in the middle section of the song, all the chords are major chords, meaning the interval can stay the same. So it's all programmed with MIDI, but in the case of the middle section, there was some performance on the actual instrument, changing the parameters. Let's just turn off all the effects and listen to what the instrument sounds like. Now, if you're astute, you'll notice this is not a dry synth sound. I often record synth sounds straight through guitar pedals and record the result directly. I'm fairly confident with the levels of effects and making sure I have dry-wet correct. This is just faster and more immediate, and I like working this way and cornering myself into making certain decisions. In this case, we just have a Bell Epoch Tape Echo guitar pedal from Catlin Bread. Now let's listen to what the plugins might be doing. Basic stuff on this track, I have compression. I have a filter again, so that I can bring in more high or less high frequencies throughout the track. I have the rhythmic tremolo, which I believe, again, is just quarter notes in this case. It's a little bit of a different shape than you saw on the other track that I showed you. So let's listen to that. Just gets a little more saturated sounding, a little more compressed, a little more gnarly. Let's listen to the middle section that I was talking about. For this B section, many of the parameters on the synth have changed. I had to record this last, doing the 2 A sections, the one at the beginning and end of the song first, for a consistent sound between those. So much longer notes. That's so fat sounding. Let's put it in the context of the track. Definitely one of the most important elements in this section. Let's take it away. Now, I didn't make this section a pure loop. Actually, this section looks to be more of a performance. At least I tried to mimic a performance. So it's varying all the time and syncopating. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's all I really have time for today, so I hope this has been instructive. Let me know in the comments. Please like and subscribe if you get the chance, and let me know what more you'd like to learn about after you've had a listen to this track when I release it. I should have it released in a week or so keep your eyes and ears peeled.